Even though Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was just elected a year ago, he's making swift changes. According to The Hill, the state's Department of Education released updated guidelines on, quote, model policies for the treatment of transgender students in public schools. The department will now require students to be separated by their biological sex for any school program, event, or activity, including extracurricular activities. These updated guidelines come after Youngkin ran on promises of parental rights in schools and against teaching critical race theory in the classroom. Now, according to Axios, this is specifically targeting, we're doing bathrooms again, the favorite subject of everyone for some reason, saying that students will have to use the bathroom that corresponds to their biological sex. This matters, obviously, because you could be, at that young age, I guess, in theory, saying that you're transgender and you haven't transitioned or, gone through any of the stuff yet, because generally they actually do not do it that early. Previously, schools would have been allowed to then let you use the bathroom of the gender you're claiming rather than your biological gender. So that's a pretty significant difference. I don't know why we just wouldn't make it the policy for what I've said it should be. Why can't there just be like a third bathroom for people who say they're they're transgender or they're non-binary, or whatever, they need some kind of special accommodation, which is actually what a federal, although I think the Obama administration said you couldn't even do that. You really had to do it. No, it has to be one or the other, but they get to pick, which didn't make any sense. Honestly, none of it makes any sense from doing this at a macro level. I would certainly just kind of let the schools figure out how to work this out on their own. But what do you think, Batya?
I think it's a really tough call because you have sort of conflicting rights at stake here. On the one hand, the right of children who don't want to see, other children of other gender in their bathroom, right, or of other biological gender, let's say, in their bathroom. On the other hand, the right of those children to be in the bathroom that feels right to them. And especially because we know that there is this kind of, I believe it's a social contagion, but it is happening. The social contagion is real. These children do believe that they are, one gender or another. And at that point, you're sort of forcing them into a situation where, I could just imagine a lot of sort of bullying situations happening in bathrooms. If you have a child who presents as female, but who's still biologically male, who's now being forced to go to the boys' bathroom, it's really, really complicated. And I think Governor Youngkin's been very good at listening to his constituents. He's been very good at listening, taking the temperature of where parents are at. And I think it's I would be surprised if this didn't reflect a kind of, majority of what parents want in his district, because he's so sensitive to that. But at the same time, I do think this is a very difficult issue, and we need to take it seriously as a difficult issue. It's not simple, I would say.
I agree with you completely. It's not simple. Look, there is a lot. Even take the transgender issue out of the question. Even without that issue, there is bullying that goes on in bathrooms and locker rooms. We've seen there was a clip of violence that went viral in a school bathroom. I don't think it was in Virginia. I can't recall where it was, but just boys beating up another boy. Like bad stuff happen. You take the politics out of it. These can be unsafe and harmful environments, and ones that schools should work to fix. And my view would be we should probably move toward like extending just greater privacy in locker rooms, in bath. Like it's kind of weird to allow like the amount of just like letting everyone change and be naked and everything in front of each other. That can be really hard and embarrassing for a lot of kids. It can invite all kind of abuse and violence. Move toward having more private areas where people can not be leered at by other people or be subject to abuse. It seems like that should be done even apart from the transgender issue, right? Am I crazy on that?
Well, it's so interesting. We as Americans, we're very puritanical. Like other cultures don't have this children share bathrooms of different gender, but that's who we are, Right. But it's the same thing on both sides of that. That's who we are. We are very puritanical. We do like to keep our genders separate in bathrooms. At the same time, who we are also is a culture, at least on the left, that is encouraging children to see themselves in this new light that is making things more complicated. And it is not the child. It's not the 12-year-old child child's fault, who thinks that, who's a biological male, who thinks that they are a girl, like that they are growing up in a culture where that is now being encouraged. And at that situation, you have to deal with the fact that this is a child. And they have sensitivities as well. So, whatever our political orientation is, wherever we fall on this question, I just think it's so important to think about, just like you said, Robby, the safety of every child, the comfort of every child. And then, but that can come into conflict, right? You have a child who their comfort level says, I should be allowed to use the girls' bathroom, even though I still, I'm biologically male. And then there are other girls there who might say, no, that makes me feel uncomfortable. These are really difficult issues of our time.
And I think the area to really push back on the wokeness or whatever you want to call it is really with the sports teams, where you have clear differences in ability, even at the, not just at the professional level, but frankly even at the high school or even younger level. In some, it's more pronounced in some sports than others. It's not socially constructed, despite what the Atlantic said. Did you see this? Our friend, my colleague at Reason, Liz Wolfe, tweeted about it. This Atlantic article that read this quote. I'll read it for you. Decades of research have shown that sex is far more complex than we may think, and those sex differences in sports show advantage for men. Researchers today still don't know how much of this to attribute to biological difference versus the lack of support provided to women athletes to reach their highest potential. So yeah, it's just totally. I mean, you could find some research, some professor to agree with any. You could find someone somewhere to agree with any ridiculous proposal, but no, we don't. We actually do know to attribute it to biological difference substantially. Most women can't, run faster or out wrestle or out dribble or out whatever it is. Most men, not because they're not getting enough, love from their parents or whatever, or the society, whatever it is. It's just cold biological reality. And I think it's absolutely right to preserve female-only competitive athletic spaces. That I agree with absolutely. I think that's a little different than the bathroom and locker room question, which is really one of harassment that can be difficult to solve, even independent of the question.
And the polling actually reflects what you just said, Robby, that, a lot of people who feel very, sympathetic towards transgender issues overall are, support kind of drops off when it comes to sports. And I think that this sort of ties into something that comedian and commentator Bill Maher said over the weekend, which was that parents will be voting for former President Donald Trump just to keep their kids from being what he called, quote, indoctrinated by transgender ideals and critical race theory, even though they think that Trump is what he called a creep. So let's watch that.
To me, the two biggest issues are democracy and the environment. Those are my two big, 1 and 2. But I don't have kids. I know people who say, I have kids. And I don't like it when they come home and say, they divided the class today into oppressors and oppressed. And if I change my sex, I don't have to tell my parents.
Yeah.
There's shit like that going on that makes people go, I agree, Donald Trump is a creep. He is everything wrong that could be stuffed into one man. But I have these other considerations. To me,
Okay, here's my problem with that. It's that many of Donald Trump's supporters in 2016 and 2020 said that exact thing. Like, that's something that I think Democrats don't realize. I cannot tell you, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who voted for Trump, and very few of them did not say something along those lines to me. Yeah, he's not the best person in the world. Yeah, I don't like the tweeting. Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's undignified the way he expresses himself. But NAFTA, but deaths of despair, right? But immigration, which are all extremely legitimate, important issues that are just as legitimate as I don't want my child coming home and saying that they're an oppressor or that they're oppressed, right? And that's the thing that I think that, I wish somebody had said to Bill Maher, that is also true of many of your Republican neighbors. They do not approve of his personality. They do not approve of the way he expresses himself. But there are things that are as important to them, perhaps even more so, that make it a legitimate choice.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see if that is put to the test with someone who fights who is good from a new Republican perspective on all of those issues and stands up to Trump, like a Ron DeSantis, goes up against him, and then we'll put it to the test. We'll see if they go, yeah, well, Ron DeSantis is, I think even the most ardent Democrat would concede is like a more, responsible. Maybe they wouldn't say that. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe he's the next Hitler too, because that's what everybody has to be. But it is certainly more restrained in his, I guess his, speaking and tweeting. He doesn't actually tweet that much. So we'll see if that's the case. If it's really they just needed to signal opposition to these specific policies rather than endorse Trump as a human being. That we're going to have a test of that, I suspect, in a short while. But we'll keep paying attention to this, and we'll have more Rising in just a minute.